All right. Welcome to another public live stream session. I'm super fired up to talk about the most crucial strategies you need to know to achieve your first $100,000 in savings and investments. Um, you should see how many of my private clients have become completely debt free or achieve $100,000 in investments. And every one of them got a trophy from me personally because it's such a major milestone. And just recently, I launched a brand new private fire community where you get to meet like-minded individuals and couples who are actively trying to pay off debt or invest in their early retirement. And you can also connect with me more on a personal level. And you can visit firestation.com/community to get your free trial right now. And you can cancel it at any time. And I really thought about opening it for everyone, but I need to filter spam and bots for this private community. Okay. So you're also never going to miss an update from me about the stock market, fire strategy, and anything else that's finance related and what I'm investing in and all that stuff too. And if you're one of my channel members, just go to the community tab on my YouTube channel and you'll see the members only post about the discount code and you'll get the entire month off for the private community. So be sure to check it out when you get a chance. And if you're interested in joining my private client program, you can schedule a 60-minute session with me by visiting firestation.com/consultation. And you can also get your free financial resources by visiting firestation.com/resources. Now, first thing I want to go over. Okay. I can't, oh, sorry. That's good. All right. So I can't emphasize enough that you should not start investing until you have a certain level of cash reserve set aside. And that's the cash bucket strategy I'm going to go over in this video. Cash is like your mattress, not stuffing your cash in your mattress, but that cushion between you and the floor so that all of your money doesn't get tied up in your taxable investments and retirement or real estate. So before you start maximizing your investment contributions, you need to have your cash set aside to diversify your total assets. And this is how I diversify my cash reserve on my way to $100,000. In my checking account, I always keep at least 1 month of expenses carried over month. So if 1 month of my expenses is $3,000, then I'm keeping $3,000 in my checking account. And keeping that $3,000 balance would prevent you from getting hit with overdraft fees. You don't have to do $3,000, but you can do something like $1,000 or $1,500. It depends entirely on how much it costs to pay your rent, mortgage, or other large payments so that you don't go under on your checking account. And remember that your primary checking account is used for expenses, not for savings. So saving any more than that will be lost to inflation, right? Excuse me. And the next bucket is your rainy day fund/emergency fund. And I designate this cash bucket as anything that is necessary and unexpected. When you're initially paying off your high interest debt, this bucket is your rainy day fund to keep at least your minimum deductibles in this account. So if it costs you $500 to pay for your car insurance deductible in case of a car accident, $500 to pay for your medical deductible for a medical emergency, and let's say another $1,000 to pay for your homeowner's insurance deductible for damage to your property, then you should have at least $2,000 set aside. It entirely depends on your total insurance deductibles that you have. After you pay off your high interest debt, then you turn this rainy day fund into a fully funded emergency fund that will cover 3 to 6 months of your bare minimum expenses in case of unemployment. Again, this account should only be used for something necessary but unexpected. The Taylor Swift concert is not necessary or unexpected, right? And this bucket is another crucial savings account to have, and it's called the annual spending account, or I sometimes call it the annual expenses account. This is probably the most overlooked account when it comes to budgeting. And this is for anything necessary and expected. How much does it cost to do your vehicle maintenance every year or every 2 years? Do you have any credit card annual fees? Amazon Prime right now, annual membership is like 140 or 150 bucks at the time I'm recording this video, right? So putting away 140 bucks in your annual expenses account could help you avoid going under in your monthly budget. And the next bucket you should have is a discretionary fund. And this is used for anything unnecessary but expected. And what's considered unnecessary, and that would be the Taylor Swift concert. And sorry, Swifties, but you know I'm right, right? So sometimes or something discretionary will be like birthday presents, birthday parties, concerts, sporting events, anniversary celebrations, and Christmas presents. And most of these events I mentioned just now could cost you at least $100 more for a single event. How much do you think you'll spend on a hockey game? How much do you spend on your kid's birthday party? And how much do you think you'll spend on your Christmas shopping? And those are the things you're going to have to think about when it comes to the discretionary fund. And what you don't want to do is end up carrying a credit card debt for doing something fun, right? And the next savings account is probably my favorite one, and that is the travel fund. This is obviously for something that is not necessary, but more on the discretionary side. The reason why I separate this from the discretionary fund is because I tend to purchase plane tickets at least 3 to 6 months in advance. And there's more planning that goes into it when it comes to traveling. And some people combine their discretionary and travel funds into one fund. And that's totally fine if you can properly plan for your travel. And the last savings bucket will be more for something you're going to purchase for just one time. And this is called a major sinking fund. And you could be saving for a vehicle, home improvement, like upgrading your kitchen, or a down payment on your first home. My rule of thumb is if it's something I'm going to purchase within the next 36 months or 3 years, then I'm going to keep it in cash in a high yield savings account or CDs. If it's something I'm going to purchase in 3 years or more, then I'm going to move that to a separate taxable brokerage account and invest in an index fund or something like that. You need to assess your risk versus reward before you decide to put it in a high yield savings account or a taxable brokerage account. Okay. And once you have all of your cash buckets set aside, the next step is to start investing. And if you're wondering which account you need to open first, I always recommend opening a Roth IRA, which is separate from your 401k or 403b or TSP. If you're already in a high deductible health plan, you should have a high health savings account that could lower your taxable income. And before you open any additional investment accounts, you need to first understand how your 401k works. You could have a 403b, TSP, or something similar with your employer, but they all essentially work the same. So I'll just say 401k throughout this video. Okay. And one of the fastest ways to get to your first $100,000 is by investing in your 401k, especially if it comes with an employer match. And your 401k is directly contributed from your paycheck. And you could elect to contribute to the traditional portion, the Roth portion, or a combination of both. The traditional portion is in pre-tax dollars, or you haven't paid any taxes into the 401k, and the Roth portion is in after-tax dollars, or you have already paid taxes into the 401k. And since Secure Act 2.0 was passed in 2022, your employer could give you the option to put the match into either the traditional portion or the Roth portion. Just keep in mind that if you select the Roth option for your employer match, you're going to have to pay the income tax now, but it will grow tax-free inside your Roth portion, which also avoids the RMD or required minimum distributions in the future. Not every 401k plan offers this deal just yet. So be sure to get with your HR to find out if this is available for you. Whatever the choice you make, don't miss out on the employer match. If you need to contribute at least 5% to your 401k to get the 5% employer contribution, you should contribute at least 5% to your 401k. And let me show you how an employer match. Oh, hold on one second. Man, gotta clear my throat. Sorry about that. All right. So let me show you how an employer match could make a big difference in your 401k. And you can download this retirement calculator by visiting firechatcher.com/resources. And let's assume that your annual income is $70,000 a year with a 15% contribution rate. Without the employer match, it would take you about 7 years right here to hit about $100,000 in your 401k. And this is also assuming that your income increases by 2% every year. Okay. So, but what if I add right here 5% for the contribution rate? Now, it will take you about 5.5 years instead of 7 years to reach $100,000, assuming that the 401k performs an average of 8% average annual return. And remember that your employer match doesn't count towards your personal contribution. You could get to your goal a lot faster if you max out your personal contribution every year. And some employers might even be generous in giving you more employer matches or profit sharing, regardless of how much you contribute to your 401k. So be sure to ask your HR how it works. And you could get from $100,000 to $1,000,000 a lot faster if you consistently invest and increase your contribution to the maximum limit set by the IRS, right? So let's forget about the 401k, Roth IRA, or any of these retirement accounts for a moment. And let's just truly focus and I want you to focus and understand how compound interest works, because the interest, earnings, and dividends reinvestment will compound over time. So let's say you invest $10,000 into an index fund in 1 year, and the index fund you're contributing makes a 10% return by the end of the first year. You're going to earn $1,000 in interest or unrealized capital gains. So you're going to end the year with $11,000. In year two, oops, click on something. There we go. All right. Now let's take a look at year two. The account balance will start with $11,000, right? And if the account earns 8%, then you're gonna have almost $900 in capital gains from that $11,000 at the beginning of year two, and that gives you the ending balance of $11,880. But what if we have a tough year in the stock market? Let's say you lose 5% in investments, then you're going to have a loss of almost $600 and finish the year with $11,286. And what most people forget to do is or they forget the concept of buy low, sell high when the market goes through a tough time, right? There are people who become so scared to invest when the market keeps on dipping. It's kind of like catching a falling knife. But if you had invested another $10,000 in the year, right here, okay? Let's say the market goes down. Generally speaking, you essentially bought it with a 5% discount, right? So no matter what happens in the market, if you're nowhere near your retirement, buying all the time will always give your money the opportunity to grow for the long term. If your investment pays you dividends every quarter or every year, you can reinvest that back into the same investment and keep growing. What if your ETF grows 8% this year and pays you another, let's say 1% in dividends? That's a total of 9% return, right? But what makes more sense? Oh, man, keep pressing the wrong button today. Sorry about that, guys. There you go. Okay. So what makes more sense? Lump sum investing or dollar cost average? A 2021 Northwestern Mutual Life study showed that investing a lump sum has outperformed dollar cost averaging over periods of time. But you have to keep in mind that the study was done based on past historical returns, which don't guarantee your future results. And I'm sure you've heard that before, right? So let's say you have $10,000 that you want to invest into an index fund. And if you invest all $10,000 in one day, then that's called lump sum investing, because you're just putting that entire money into one transaction and investing it all at once. This situation is pretty common for people who receive an inheritance or who left an employer and rolled that old 401k into a new 401k or an IRA, right? And I actually lump sum invest my backdoor Roth IRA conversion every year, but that's a topic for a separate video. So let me use the S&P 500 ETF as an example. If you lump sum invest $10,000 every year from January 1st, 2014 to January 1st, 2023, you would have just over $200,000 with an average of 13% return annually. We had two down years from 2018 and 2022. You would still have $100,000 in principal and $101,000 in total earnings. And you can check out my compound interest calculator by visiting firesightcheck.com/resources if you need to fact check it yourself. And what if your dollar cost average your $10,000 by investing $833 every month for the next 12 months based on the historical data from 2014 to 2023? You would have about $190,000 by the end of 2023 with an average annual return of 12.3%. That is a difference of about $11,000 over the course of 10 years. And keep in mind that all of the data I'm showing you right now are from 2014 to 2023. Is lump sum investing always going to be dollar cost averaging? We won't know until the very last day of the year, right? And here's some pros and cons of lump sum investing. And I am a long term investor. So I like the fact that I'm putting my money to work as soon as possible. If you're 15, 20, or 30 years from retirement, lump sum investing might be the right option for you. You also won't have to stress about the best time to buy investments. You just let your portfolio ride it out with the market. But the downside of lump sum investing is it may discourage you. If you're a brand new investor and you experience a bear market in the first year, if 2022 was your first time investing your $10,000 into an S&P 500 index fund, you would have finished the year with about $8,200 that year. Okay. And that's about an 18% down, right? And the other downside, and the other downside of it is that if you need to sell the investment right away, you're going to end up owing short-term capital gains tax for the entire profit you made from $10,000 because it is from one single transaction. And if you dollar cost average throughout the year from January to December, you can pick specific tax lots inside your portfolio so that you can reduce your tax liability. And if you receive an employer match from your 401k, it is better to dollar cost average by the frequency of your paycheck so that you don't miss out on the match. Some employers will give you the match regardless of your contribution schedule, but most employers will stop giving you the match if you have already maxed out your contributions. Okay. And lastly, I prefer to dollar cost average due to psychological reasons. The stock market moves in waves. Okay. It doesn't move in a straight line every year, right? So whenever there's market volatility, I just buy a little bit more so that I can get a discount buying into the investments. Not every single year is going to go in a straight line from 0 to 13%. It's not going to go from 0 to 12.3%. It could be down by 2%, it could be down by 5%. And then eventually it just goes in waves and goes up. Some years, like 2022, we could finish the year with negative 18%. In 2018, it finished the year with the negative 6%, right? So psychologically speaking, I just buy a little bit more so that I can get a discount buying into the investment. And it just makes me feel a little better about investing throughout the year, not knowing how the stock market will perform in the future, right? So right now, let's say in July, looking back, of course, everyone would say, man, if I had put more money into, let's say, the S&P 500, I would have made this much return. But at the beginning of the year in January, you're not going to know how the market is going to do for the rest of the year. There are a lot of articles saying that there's going to be a bear market, there's going to be a recession, that type of thing. The recession hasn't come, right? At the time I'm recording this video. But when you're dollar cost averaging into the investment, you do feel a little better because you're just kind of like, oh, the market is down, I'm buying. The market is up, I'm still buying. That's really kind of what drives behind dollar cost averaging. Okay. Even if you don't make as much as lump sum investing. And when it comes to investing, you have to first understand your risk tolerance. And allocating your investments to more stocks will give you a higher return than allocating some of your investments to bonds, right? But when we go through a bear market year, you could see some losses in value if you have more stocks allocated to your portfolio. So how do you balance your portfolio based on your risk tolerance? Maybe you're someone who is completely comfortable with having 100% invested in stocks, but maybe you're someone who can't stomach the short-term losses because you're close to your retirement age, right? So when you hear the word risk or look at this S&P 500 chart, how does it make you feel? Do you become worried about losing your returns, or do you feel thrilled about the opportunity for great returns? Your risk tolerance is all about your behavior. Some people naturally don't like to take any risks, but they have to understand that they're not going to get a greater return on their investments. If they don't invest in stocks, right, then you're not going to get the better return then, well, let's say if you just put all of your money in bonds, you're just not going to get as much return from stocks. That's just based on historical returns. But if they take too much risks, right, then they could potentially lose more than they should if they invest in something way too volatile, right? And I was very risk averse when I first started investing because I didn't quite understand how the stock market worked at the time. It was only a few years right after the global recession in 2008 to 2009. So I had no idea how our economy or the stock market would move forward after that disaster, right? So you have to understand, or first understand, your financial goals so you don't make a costly mistake. If you put all of your money in a bank account, you're not going to generate any earnings or wealth, but but that point, what is it, 0.02% in interest. Even in a high yield savings account during the height of inflation, it gave us 5%, but it still did not beat the S&P 500 when it performed 20% or more in a year. This is also known as the opportunity cost. If you look back at 2008 and 2009, would you go back and invest in the S&P 500 at what was it, 1,000 points? You're of course going to say yes, right? Smart investors will consider both risk and return. A smart investor doesn't put every single dollar in bonds or cash because it's barely going to keep up with inflation every year. A smart investor puts their dollars to work so that they can grow to achieve financial independence. But you also have to remember that even the most conservative portfolio can experience short-term losses due to market volatility. 2022 was a perfect example of when both stocks and bonds were down. So if you take a look at this chart from Schwab, assuming that you started investing $10,000 every year from 1970 to 2014, having 80% stocks. Let me draw this. I know the screen is a little bit small. Okay. Look at the aggressive portfolio. If you invested 80% stocks, 15% bonds, and 5% cash, will give you a 10% average annual return or $892,000. Having a 60-30-10 moderate portfolio gives you a 9.4% average annual return or $676,000. And a 30-50-20 conservative portfolio will only grow to $389,000. The 80-15-5 allocation isn't necessarily the most aggressive fund, like this chart says, but you can see that it had the highest annualized return. But if you look at the volatility here, okay, it had a maximum loss of 44.4% from 2008 to 2009 under the aggressive portfolio. People who stomach those losses actually came out on top with more money invested at the end. The conservative portfolio only suffered a 14% maximum loss, right? But the total return was not even half of the most aggressive portfolio. So when it comes to deciding your risk tolerance, you need to understand your limits and how much you can stomach short-term volatility. What is your time horizon between now and your financial goal? How many years until you reach your retirement age? What are your personal circumstances that require you to be more risk averse? Investing 100% in stocks isn't always the answer for everyone watching this because not everyone has the same financial goal, right? You can always schedule a consultation with me by visiting firesightchat.com/consultation to discuss your financial situation. Now, I'm going to nerd out a little bit more. I want to show you guys this. Okay. And there's always a way to calculate your portfolio allocation. This is not in any form of personalized financial advice, but it is a good rule of thumb to start with if you don't know where to start. Okay. So you've probably heard of what's called the rule of 100. When you Google search portfolio allocation calculation, the rule of 100 that calculates, it calculates your portfolio allocation and how much of it should consist of stocks. Again, this is just a rule of thumb, so you don't necessarily have to follow it at all. I don't. Okay. For example, if you're 35 years old, the rule of 100 will be 100 minus 35, and that gives you 65 or 65% stocks and 35% bonds. And many experts over the years believe that this is too risk averse for people in their 30s. So they say, forget this. Okay. And they want to come up with maybe something better because people are living a lot longer than the previous generation. So, you want your portfolio to last into your 70s, 80s, and 90s. And most of you watching this are in a hyper accumulation phase. And I have to agree with them. I would even argue that it might be too risk averse for people in their 40s using the rule of 100, depending on their time horizon, right? So some would recommend using the rule of 120, and maybe it's going to go up to rule 130, right? Because we're living a lot longer than our previous generations. And 120 minus 35 will give you 85% stocks and 15% bonds. So that would be much more aggressive than what I showed you with the 65% stocks and 35% bonds. So it gives you more exposure to risk while you're still young. That's right. 35 years old is still young. You can fight me about it. All right. And most articles you find on the internet will say to plan for your retirement at the age of 67. However, you should put 59 and a half in the equation because that's when you're eligible to withdraw from your retirement investments penalty free. How many years out are you from turning 59 and a half? You might already have other investment accounts with some bond allocation. You want to look at your overall investments, time horizon, and risk tolerance. Can you stomach a 30% loss in value in just 1 year? If you invest in something that is considered aggressive growth, right? And the most important question to you is if you know what you're investing in, because you should never buy something you don't understand, right? So let me show you another rule that's going to help you out, right? Let me go over another rule. This rule is called the rule of 72. This is more of a math problem than probabilities. So the rule of 72 is super simple for you to understand. And it's super simple for you to figure out how much and how long it takes your investments to double over the years. Okay. So let's say this is not a made up number because the SEC or the Securities and Exchange Commission even cites the rule of 72 in their financial literacy resources. The rule of 72 helps you calculate how long it takes your investments to double based on the average annual return. So, for example, let's say you have a goal to have at least $1 million invested in your taxable brokerage account. And let's say you have an account balance of $200,000 right now and you don't want to put any more money into the portfolio because you want to just ride it out with the market until it hits $1 million. So if you find an index fund that you think will perform an average of 8% annual return, so 72 divided by 8 will give you 9 years. So in 9 years, that $200,000 will double to $400,000. In 18 years, it will grow to $800,000. Is it guaranteed that it will take 18 years to reach that number? Not necessarily. It's just a basic calculation. It will depend entirely on how the investment will perform in real numbers. And if the average annual return is 9%, then it's going to take 8 years to double the investment. If the average annual return is 10 years, then it's going to take 7.2 years. Pretty simple, right? So if you're trying to invest your first $100,000, how long it takes you to get there will depend entirely on how much you put into the investment. This spreadsheet shows the S&P 500 historical returns from 2014 to 2023. So let's say you lump sum invest $10,000 every year from 2014 to 2023. Okay. It would take you about 6 years, or at the beginning of 2020, to get to $100,000. This is just that's the end of 2020. You see how it's performed an average of 11.29% annual return from 2014 to 2020, right? So if you use the rule of 72 and calculate 72 divided by 11, it's going to give you about 6.5 years, which isn't exactly double because that spreadsheet shows $10,000 every year for 7 years. So let me delete the rest of 10,000 and just show you the $10,000 from 2014. Do you see how it's double by the end of year 7 here at 20,400, right? By the end of 2020, because it's an 11% average annual return. So when you contributed another $10,000 in 2015, now that rule of 72 will be based on the average annual return from 2015 to how the market performed down to 2021, and that says 26% return, right? So understanding this rule can help you plan for your financial independence journey. What matters more is how much you save and invest. You have control of how much you put into the account, but you don't have any control of how the investment will perform in the future. And I know that was a lot of information, but it's crucial that you understand how some of these investments or how these rules work in your favor before you start investing. Okay. Let me take a break 1 second. Just so you guys know, I'm out of Vegas, so it is extremely hot here and humid for some reason. Humidity is not something that I'm used to, living in the dry desert. So I'm going to drink some water just real quick. Give me 1 second, okay? And you can watch this. So what do you think is better? Investing $500 a month, making 10% return, or investing $1,000 a month, making a 7% return on investment? You can't figure out how much you can invest without a budget. There's no way around it. I personally tested out the budgeting app called YNAB, and it's not just an app that can track your income and expenses, but it can even help you create a plan to pay down your student loans, car loans, personal loans, or credit cards a lot faster. So if you're ready to change your life by getting out of the paycheck to paycheck cycle, you can get a free trial without any credit card information by using a link in the description below. Just gave out some free channel membership. So make sure you go to the community tab and on my channel, and you're gonna get a big discount on my private community. So just check it out. You're gonna get a free trial on that. And people are getting a lot of value out of it, and people are getting trophies for investing in the first $100,000, and people are getting out of debt, which I'm even more excited about because people are getting out of tens of thousands of dollars in debt, and it's so exciting for them because you know they work so hard to get there. But excuse me, oh my God, I should have muted that. Sorry if you're wearing headphones. Okay, and all right. Let me resume this. So let me show you how I saved my first $100,000. Most of you don't know my story, but I once had over $110,000 in total consumer debt. I felt absolutely sick to my stomach when I first calculated my net worth. And I made a lot of mistakes in my 20s, but I swore to myself that I would never get myself into that type of situation again. And I was tired of being broke. So I spent 2 whole years from January 2014 to December 2015 to completely pay off my debt. And this was my net worth statement at the end of 2016, right after I paid off my debt, or that was in 2015. And as soon as I paid off my debt, I was really excited to start investing. But the very first thing I did was to open a high yield savings account. And the interest rate at the time was around 1% APY in 2016, which was still better than 0.02% with a regular bank. So I spent the first 5 months here saving for an emergency fund, and it got to about $24,000. And that was enough to cover at least 6 months of my expenses in case I ever became unemployed. And the next step I did was to contribute to my 401k, but only up to the employer match. And my contribution rate in 2016 was 8%, and my employer contributed 4% of my income. So my total 401k contribution rate was 12% in the same year. I didn't get to achieve 15% because I was still trying to pile up my cash after getting out of debt, right? So I maxed out my Roth IRA though, and finished the year with about $19,000 in total retirement between 401k and Roth IRA. This is all I had. If you take a look at the total assets that I had here, okay, $43,000 was the most I ever had in my life at the age of 30 that year. And it was an amazing feeling to have. But I wasn't quite accomplished yet. I couldn't have done this without paying off my consumer debt in December 2015. But I wanted to get to that $100,000 because that was the hardest one to make. So I wanted to make another sacrifice. And I lived very, very frugally. 2016, 2017, right? So by the end of 2016, I still wanted to maximize my retirement savings. I did, however, had 6 months of my expenses in an emergency fund and some fun money set aside to travel. This was my cash cushion between me and investments. I didn't want to have too much in my retirement without having any cash aside. So I maxed out my Roth IRA every year starting in 2016. And the stock market treated me pretty well in 2016 with a 10% return. In 2017 with a 20% return. And 2018 was really discouraging for me because I'm like, why is everything going down, right? But 2019 gave me another whopping 28% return. And I was 100% invested in the S&P 500 because I didn't know any better, but the S&P 500 at the time, and even with a negative 6% loss in 2018, I still had a 13% average annual return between those 4 years. And I really wish that I had maxed out my 2015 Roth IRA contribution, but it's too late for me to go back in time now. So do not miss out your Roth IRA contribution. Okay. And 2017 was the year I truly started to max out my 401k contributions. It wasn't just the employee contribution limit. My 401k was with Vanguard at the time, and they allowed me to do the mega backdoor Roth or the 401k after tax contribution. I made the employee contribution of $18,000. My employer contributed another $6,000, and I contributed an additional $30,000 at under the after-tax bucket. Not every employer offers this. So I was happy that I had the opportunity to do so. I had the after-tax contribution in my 401k roll over to my Roth IRA with Vanguard, or what's called in-service withdrawals to my Roth IRA. That was a life-changing moment for my investment journey because the S&P 500 finished with about a 20% return that year. So I'm not going to say that I did 100% of the work, but I had some luck on my side too. But my 401k and Roth IRA combined finished the year with about $70,000. My total assets by mid 2018 were already six figures. I continued to do the mega backdoor Roth 2 more times in 2018 and 2019. Then I stopped doing it in 2020 because I wanted to have more cash set aside to travel more. My savings rate was extremely, extremely high because my expenses were really low. And I was still living like, I was trying to pay off my debt. But kind of thinking back, I really wish that I had enjoyed my time a little bit more. But I also didn't want to have most of my assets tied up in my retirement account. So I reallocated some of those assets into my taxable brokerage account instead. And I also realized that I didn't want to sacrifice everything and not enjoy the moment while I was investing for financial independence. I wanted to take my daughter on a Disney cruise and take my mom to Hawaii. I took my wife to New York for a nice dinner because I had no consumer debt, right? And the decision to make the sacrifice to pay off $110,000 in consumer debt by December 2015 really opened up a whole new door for me to invest in my retirement. I didn't even start investing in my taxable brokerage account until 2018 because I needed to catch up on my retirement as soon as possible. If you think it's impossible for you to save your first 100,000, just ask my community members. They all got their trophies from me because they focused on their goal of becoming financially independent. Investing your first $100,000 is your first goal. And then becoming a net worth millionaire is your next goal. You will get there. Just stay focused on your plan and don't give up. And you can join my private fire community by visiting firestarchat.com/community or schedule a consultation with me by visiting firestarchat.com/consultation. And this has been another beast of a video, and I hope you got a lot out of it. And let's do the Q&A. Okay, this is being live streamed to both Instagram and Facebook. Facebook is kind of weird. Yeah. Okay, let me go through some of the Ohio State. Hey, okay. Hello. Yeah, thank you. The cash reserve thing is really important. People just kind of jump right into the investing, and they forget to create that cash cushion between them. If you have all of your money tied up in your 401k and you have no cash at all, you are still poor. Okay. And a lot of people just kind of end up borrowing money for like home improvement or something else because they just have all of their money tied up in their 401k. You also don't want to borrow from your 401k because you want to let that grow. Some people will argue and say that they can put their interest back into their 401k. But if you take a look at 2021, look at 2019, take a look at 2024, we're making some really great returns in the portfolio because uh, and if I borrow money out of that, I'm having that I'm missing out on the opportunity, right? So I always separate what I have in my 401k from what I spend now. And you gotta keep focusing on what you need in the short term versus what you need in the long term. Okay, two different things. So yeah, appreciate you. And it's nothing is ever safe, to be honest with you. Like investing in the S&P 500 is not like, oh, just put 100% into the S&P 500 and then you're good. And when people say it is tanking now, what is it really tanking, right? Like, what if we have a 2% loss? What if we have a, I don't know, 5% loss in one day? To me, that means I am buying these S&P 500 index fund with a 5% discount. I'm going to buy more because that means that I'm going to have that money grow even bigger 10, 20, 30 years down the road. Now, if I'm going to be retiring within the next 5 years and I need to rely on my 401k or I need to rely on this investment account to pay for my expenses, then I want to be a little bit more conservative to preserve my capital, right? Maybe I don't want to put all of my portfolio to expose it to a risk. So that's something that you have to consider where you are. What is your time horizon? Let me take a look at what's going on with the S&P 500 right now. It is now 1.62%. I mean, I've seen a crash, the real crash when it comes to, when they ring the bell to stop the trading, it will be like down 7%, 10% in one day. I mean, if you take a look at the chart, it says it's down 2.55% in the past 5 days. In the past month, it's pretty flat. In the past 6 months, it's still up 12.26%. And what people really forget, and because they focus more, and I'm not trying to attack you, whoever asked that question, Bank. I'm not trying to attack you, but you have to remember the long-term horizon. What is this going to do for us? We're still making 15% year-to-date contribution, a year-to-date return in 2024. In 1 year, 20%, 5 years, 80%. And what's the maximum? Since when? Since 2000, right? I don't. What's the average annual return on that? It's about 8%, right? And in the last 10 years, it's about 12% average annual return. So whenever I see this day, 1.63%, and as soon as I'm done, with the live stream, I'm gonna log into my brokerage account and buy more because I love when the market is dipping. And I'm not telling you what to do. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not telling you need to go buy. I'm not telling you need to sell or anything like that. I have never done that on my channel, and I never will. If you ever hear anybody else on YouTube saying that you need to buy with me or sell with me, please don't do it. Okay. Your financial situation is not the same as mine, right? I am, I'm going to be 38 this year. You may be close to your retirement age. So this might not be something that you want to risk too much, right? But you want to take a look at what the long-term horizon is going to be. If you're still 20 years out from retirement, what are you doing? Right? Do you want to buy more so that in the future you could get more? So let's take a look at 2008. S&P 500 was 770 points. Would you go back in time to buy a ton of shares of S&P 500 index fund in 2008, 2009 when unemployment rate was at 12%, 13%, 14%? Everyone's going to say yes. But in between those years, people would tell you that it would be stupid or dumb. Probably shouldn't say stupid. My daughter said I shouldn't use that word. People would say, oh, it would be, silly for you to buy shares that's just going to keep falling and falling. Okay. Ask people how they did on their investments from 2009 all the way to now. How about 2016? S&P 500 was 2,000 points. 2018, we had a major dip when COVID happened. See that dip right there, right? That was 3,300 points. Now we're approaching 5,500. Some banks are predicting that we're going to finish the year with 6,000. Personally, I think it's probably going to be pretty close to 5,700, 5,800. Just going to depend on the rate cuts. But I can't say that this is safe for you because I don't know your financial situation. So that is a answer that you're going to have to seek, or you can schedule a consultation with me. Go to my website, firesearcher.com/consultation to schedule a 60-minute session. Okay. It's another one. Can I do a mega backdoor Roth with TSP? This is a question from Instagram message. I just started my Fed job about a year ago as a GS14. Hey, that's cool. All right. I'm trying to find ways to maximize my investments. Okay. No, there's no after-tax contribution or what's called a mega backdoor Roth for the TSP, unfortunately. There are some exceptions. If you're I know you're not a military member, but if you're in the military and deployed to a combat zone, and then your contribution is actually going to go up above whatever the contribution limit is. So 23,000, it could be going up as high as 69,000. You can put it in a traditional Roth. I need to check the numbers on that, but there's some combat zone exemption for the TSP. That's really the only benefit, because combat zone exemption is actually you can do pre-tax and traditional, and then you can withdraw it tax-free too, which is really insane and awesome. But I know that's not the question you're asking, but no, the TSP does not offer the mega backdoor Roth or the after-tax contribution. Okay, so when you look at your, let's say you have a 401k in the private sector, kind of like when I had my Vanguard 401k when I worked in the private sector back then. When you look at the box, the contribution box, you're going to see the employee contribution, and then you're going to see traditional or pre-tax, and then you're going to see Roth. And then the third box, it'll say after-tax contribution. So you can log into your 401k plan and go click on contributions, and then you're going to see if there's an option for you to do that after-tax mega backdoor Roth. So let me find the slide. I show my clients. Let me see. Okay, so yeah, this is a while ago, but 401k after-tax contribution. So a lot of people think, oh, $23,000 is all you can put in the 401k. That is correct for most 401k plans. But if you're in that one of the 18% 401k plan that offers you the extra contribution, check it out and see if you can take advantage of it. Because in 2024, you can actually contribute up to $69,000 to your 401k between employee and employer, right? So if you're a self-employed individual like me, I can contribute up to $69,000 into my solo 401k in the year 2024. And if I turn 50 years old this year, I can contribute up to $76,500. Okay. I'll talk about that in a separate video, but it's how it works. So employee contribution, that's employer. So I'm going to show the employee contribution for a second. So in 2024, you can contribute $23,000 as an employee into Roth or traditional, or you can do a combination of both. You can do half into Roth, or you can do half into traditional. Okay. If you're over the age of 50, you can do 30,500 as an employee, right? And for employer contribution, this is really up to your employer. If your employer, let's say, contributes, let's make it easy. I'll put 10K on there from employer. Then that employer contribution typically goes into the traditional side of the 401k, unless they offer the plan for you to convert it into a Roth 401k. But putting this money into the Roth 401k means that you're going to have to pay the income tax on the $10,000 in 2024, tax deadline in 2025. Okay. So how this works, and there's the third bucket, that's the after-tax contribution. So the rest of it, let's do some calculations. 69K minus 23K minus 10K, right? So that would be 36K remaining. So what that means is that you have $36,000 that you can put into the after-tax contribution if your 401k allows it. Now, the process is a little complicated, so I'm going to try to explain it as simply as possible. So you have two plans. You have the option to do what's called the in-plan rollovers to Roth 401k. So immediately you put that $36,000 into the after-tax contribution. You just put it into a Roth 401k option. So all the earnings and interest that accrues from this $36,000 will stay in the Roth 401k. But if this stays here, then the earnings and interest could be taxable. But what I prefer to do is actually put money into the in-service withdrawals to Roth IRA. So what I did at the time was I had a Vanguard Roth 401k, or I'm sorry, just 401k. And I also created a Roth IRA with Vanguard. And so I set up the in-service withdrawals that I think I have another one here. Oh, yeah. And I just put money, 36K, or, it's divided by however the paycheck frequency is, directly into the Roth IRA so that all those earnings and interest do not become taxable. Okay. That's really the key thing here. The $36,000 is an after-tax contribution, but the earnings and interest become non-taxable if you put that money into the Roth IRA. I know this is so complicated. I'm sorry, but if you need to schedule a session with me to talk about this, you can. But just be very, very careful and not to leave that $36,000 or whatever the amount is going to be for you in that bucket alone. You need to make that in-service withdrawals to Roth IRA so that the earnings and interest don't become taxable income in the future. That's just one of those things that some 401k plans do offer. And you also have to make sure that 36,000 does not exceed, because this is coming from 69,000 total right here, right? So if your employer contribution goes up, let's say the 10,000 at 15K here, right here, then you need to subtract that from the 5,000 from 36,000 to 31K. Because if you do this, if you still do 36K, you might miss out on the employer match of 15K or that difference of $5,000. So you have to be very careful not to miss out on your employer match too. And I know there's so much going on here, but just, try to understand how it works between Roth and traditional as an employee first. And then second, find out what your employer contributions are going to be so that you don't contribute too much in the after-tax bucket and end up missing out on the employer contribution. So really good question. Just check it out when you get a chance. You can go to firesidechat.com/resources and get your free resources too. So, all right. Let's see. Oh, you know what? I meant to talk about this in the last live stream, and I'm going to talk about it now. That's a good one. Forgot about that. Yeah. So I've talked to many clients in the past who made this number one mistake when they roll their 401k to their IRA after switching jobs. Let me give you the breakdown, because you don't want to make the same mistake that 1 in 3 people have made and missed out on the growth. Okay. So let me see if I can share this news here. There we go. So let me show you this article from the Wall Street Journal. And when people roll their 401k balances from their old company's plan into an individual retirement account, the money is frequently held as cash until they select new investments, right? Everybody knows that. Not everybody. Many never do. According to new research from Vanguard Group, nearly a third of those who roll savings into IRAs at Vanguard in 2015 still had the balance sitting in cash 7 years later. Wow. And take a look at this data. All right. Let me see if I can zoom out here. Can I see it? Okay. So take a look at this data. It shows a percentage of IRA investors who remain in cash years after a 401k rollover. A financial advisor, let me see. Yep, this is a financial advisor here. So a financial advisor in Rockport, Maine, said a couple hired her in 2021, had rolled more than $400,000 over from a 401k to an IRA the year before. It took them a while to realize the money was still sitting in cash, and they couldn't figure out why they weren't earning any money when the stock market was showing high returns. Now, that's a fact, because 2020 had a 15% return just from the S&P 500, and 2021 had a 26% return. So let me calculate. Do I want to? All right. Let me calculate how much they missed out on their growth just real quick. 20, 200, 400,000. Okay. So yeah, if they invested the whole thing into the S&P 500 in 2020, they would have had a balance of $586,000 by the end of 2021. So they missed out about $186,000 in gains. That's gotta hurt. And man, that sucks. That sucks. Okay, take a look at this. And there's a 33-year-old nurse from Cincinnati who's lost out on thousands of dollars of gains because her IRA has been sitting in cash since 2016, when her employer rolled her pension into the IRA after she left her job. I also did this when I left my private sector job in 2021. My company had a pension plan for me, and I decided to cash that out by moving it into my traditional IRA. So I rolled that over to my solo 401k when I started this business as a self-employed individual now. And this is not intentional at all. When people roll that money from their 401k to their IRA, they thought they were done with the process and just never checked their IRA again. The Vanguard study showed that in 2022, over half of IRA owners stayed in cash for at least 12 months. And IRAs have the largest asset out of all retirement vehicles, with $14.3 trillion versus $11.1 trillion in 401k or 401k type plans. Okay. So I want to show you, the slide that I did have where I teach my clients here. So, okay, here we go. That's the one. Is that it? Yep. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so let me show you how a 401k rollover is supposed to work correctly. All right, so let's say you just quit your job and you have both traditional and Roth in your 401k. What you need to remember is that every dollar in your traditional 401k is in pre-tax dollars, while every dollar in your Roth 401k is in after-tax dollars. You already paid the government taxes on the contributions you made to the Roth 401k, so that account can only be transferred to another Roth type account, or in this case, a Roth IRA. In order to avoid paying any taxes, you want to make a rollover from a traditional 401k to a traditional IRA. You obviously can't roll over your Roth 401k to your traditional IRA because you already pay taxes on the Roth 401k, right? You can't pay the government taxes twice unless you really want to. Wouldn't recommend. But you have to remember that once you've finished the rollover from your 401k to your IRA, that money just sits in a money market fund. It doesn't pay you any interest at all. It's like 0.01%, something ridiculous. So if you don't do anything after you finish the rollover, it's just going to sit in cash. And you have to take another step to invest in a mutual fund, ETF, or whatever investments that suit you. And I make sure that my clients, that they are investing in something after they finish the rollover. Well, I never tell them what to invest, but I make sure that they don't just sit in cash, right? They need to have a plan in place. And this is the extra step where those people miss out on 10, 15, 20, or even 25% return in a year for several years. In your pension rollover, it should say right, okay, top right corner here, will most likely be in pre-tax dollars. So that's also going to be transferred to a traditional IRA. But you also have to be careful when you make the rollover. And some people have made this mistake in the past. If you roll your traditional 401k to your Roth IRA. It's now become a conversion, which means that you're going to be paying taxes on the total conversion. For example, if you make a Roth conversion from a traditional 401k to a Roth IRA in July 2024, then you will have to pay the income tax by the deadline in April 2025. But anyway, check your IRAs today and make sure you know what you're investing in. Do not make the same mistake these people did or these people in the article did. If you just made a simple rollover, it's most likely not invested yet unless you did some kind of an in-kind transfer from 401k to IRA to keep the mutual funds intact. If you're still not sure what you need to do with your old 401k, you can always schedule a session with me by visiting firesightchat.com/consultation. Let's see. Interesting. Wow. Why are people? No. So people are panicking from today's market performances. Are you guys short-term traders? 'Cause yeah. Okay. Uh, yeah. I mean, the market's gonna do what the market's gonna do, right? The Google earnings came out, Tesla earnings came out yesterday at 1 p.m. I'm in the Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and they didn't look so good. Tesla earnings, the income statement wasn't good at all. The market's definitely reacting to that. And if you look at the S&P 500 weights, top 10 holdings, it's Tesla and Google. They're not like one or two, but they're definitely on the top 10. Um, as a shareholder, it's kind of like, all right, we'll see how it goes. But nobody really expected Tesla earnings to be good. Like today, it's kind of expected that to happen. So I don't know why, need to really, I'm not really panicking on the market correction today, but that's just me. But, I'm not going to tell you what you need to do. Just everybody's different, and I get it. It's not something that everybody can stomach the losses. And I think I talked about that during the risk tolerance versus risk averse scenarios. You really need to understand how much what your risk tolerance is, right? So when people ask me, should I put everything into the S&P 500 index fund? I'm going to be like, it depends. It really does depend. Do I do 100% stocks? Sure. But does that mean you should do the same? No. Uh, if you're young, uh, it's probably better to have more exposure to stocks than bonds because you're still young and you still have time to recover from losses. But if you're close to your retirement age, then you might need to have more strategic approach to your investment portfolio. Is this something that you're going to have to rely when you're retired, right? So that's something that you need to look at. But if you're looking at, VOO is losing, 1%, 2%, or if it's down 10% in the last month because I bought it at the all-time high. I mean, people were saying the same thing back in 2020. People were saying the same thing back in 2011, 2012. If you look at 2019, S&P 500 finished the year with 28% return. And by the end of 2019, people were saying that, oh, we're at all-time high, so I'm not going to buy. So what are you going to do? Just never going to buy because you always think that the market is all-time high? I seriously started investing in 2016, and that was like, everybody was telling me it was the worst time to buy. I'm like, why? The more I read into it, it's just, people are really fearful of the market. And when they start investing, it's like, oh man, I just bought this ETF today for $400 a share, and then now it's down to 380. It can be discouraging. It can be, but you have to be ready for that kind of stuff. So, but to me, I love it. As soon as I'm done with the live stream, I'm going to buy more, because a day like today, it's kind of like, oh yeah, that's a discount. I call it a Black Friday discount to me, but my risk tolerance is really high. So, I can stomach these losses. You should have seen me in 2022. some of the videos back then, I was like, man, I bought way more. And I don't typically like to share what individual stocks I own because I'm not trying to encourage people to buy individual stocks. But I have bought the most individual stocks in 2022 during the bear market because some of the valuation from all those stocks were just unbelievably low. Like, I don't get me wrong, I had index funds across my portfolio, but there were some stocks that I just could not resist but to buy. I'll use Meta as an example. I bought Meta at $90 a share in what is October 2022. You can take a look at the Meta price now. Take a look at what the price was for Google. I bought Google. I bought Tesla. I bought more individual stocks, even though I already have index funds that were exposed to them. But I wanted to have specific individual stocks that were like, am I going to see Google bankrupt? No. Am I going to see Tesla go bankrupt? No. Am I going to see Chase go under? No. Right? That's the mentality you need to have when it comes to investing is, this is some really cheap valuation. I need to go in there. I mean, S&P 500 is at an all-time high right now, but is it going to be an all-time high again in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? Yeah. Okay, that's a good question from Facebook. Okay, so the rule of 55 is very powerful when it comes to early retirement planning because you actually don't have to wait until you're age 60 to retire with a 401k. It doesn't even have to be a 401k. The rule of 55 applies to a 401k, 403b, TSP, or any employer-sponsored retirement account, not your IRA, just your employer-sponsored retirement account. So what that means is that when you turn 55 years old, you decide to quit your job or you got fired or laid off, you can actually start withdrawing penalty-free from your 401k, 403b, or TSP as long as you're 55 years old. If you're 54 years old right now, but you're going to turn 55 in the same calendar year, the rule of 55 will also apply to you. You have to be careful though, because once you move your 401k to an IRA after you retire, you're going to lose that rule of 55 benefit and end up waiting until you're 59 and a half. Okay. So there's also let me show you this real quick. I'm going to draw some stuff. There's also an exception to policy and start making penalty-free withdrawals if you're a public safety employee. Okay. So with that, you can actually, let's say you're a public safety employee with the federal, state, or local government. If you work for the federal government, let's say, or local government as a firefighter, law enforcement officer, like let's say FBI, police officers, or air traffic controllers, you're going to get the special category employee treatment and start making penalty-free withdrawals from your 401k or 457b or TSP at the age of 50. So age 50 for public safety employees. So make sure to look it up on the on your HR website. If you're a federal employee, you can go to the OPM website if you fall under that category. Okay. Usually you're going to have a code in your TSP that you're going to be designated as a public safety officer. All right. So let me give you an example. Okay. So let's say you have a traditional 401k and you have $1 million invested by age 55. Right. So if I decide to quit my job or I get laid off or fired by my employer and I'm turning 55 this year, then I'm eligible to withdraw from my traditional 401k penalty free. Remember, this is penalty free, but not tax free because I would still owe income taxes on the distributions. So if you're in a state that requires you to pay state income tax, you got to throw that in there too. Because, I know people are going to complain that, well, I work all my life to, invest all that. But you got to remember, every dollar that you put into your traditional 401k right here, that's only pre-tax dollars. So you elected to defer your taxes, and then you elected to pay your taxes later on in your retirement. Okay, so you got to keep that in mind. It's going to be penalty free, but you will pay income tax, right? All right. So that 10% penalty would be waived, but remember that the income tax on the distribution. So what's nice about the rule of 55 is that you can take distributions from the 401k you just retire from and then get a part-time job and still keep withdrawing from your 401k if you want to. You just can't roll that over to your IRA or you're going to lose that benefit. But let's say, what if I had a Roth 401k? Okay. So if I decide to make early withdrawals from my Roth 401k using a rule of 55, the early withdrawals will have to be prorated between my Roth contributions and earnings and interest. Okay. So it's also called a pro rata combination of contributions and earnings. So I'm going to give you an example. Let's say I have 500K in Roth and I have another 500K in earnings. Okay. So what that means is that that's a total of $1 million, right? So my taxable earning ratio is 50% because $500,000 divided by the total portfolio of $1 million is 50%, right? So let's say I do the 4% withdrawal rule and I'm going to withdraw $40,000 a year from my Roth 401k. Tracking so far? Okay. So if that's the case, then I have to remember that every $40,000, 50% of that is tax-free because that's coming from my Roth contributions. I don't pay the government taxes twice. But the other 50% is taxed, okay? Because I am withdrawing by age 59 and a half. Okay. So 50% of that would be taxed because it is considered early distributions. So the other 50% is tax free because I already pay taxes on that portion, right? So when it comes to the rule of 55 with the Roth 401k, take a look at your 401k portfolio and see how much of your money was contributed after tax and how much of your Roth 401k was grown in earnings and interest and dividend reinvestments, because those are all part of earnings that you can't technically take out tax free until you're 59 and a half. But under the rule of 55, you can actually take that earnings out, but you will owe income tax on it. All right. That makes sense so far. And if when it comes to using the rule of 55, in my opinion, I think it's better to use just for the traditional portion or traditional 401k and not the Roth portion. And the reason is very simple. I want to have my Roth 401k grow tax free as long as possible while I cash out my traditional 401k until it runs out. What I don't want to deal with is the RMD or required minimum distributions in my 70s. And minimizing my tax burdens during my retirement is one of my top financial goals throughout my financial independence journey. So you also have to remember that the rule of 55 only applies to your current 401k plan. So if you previously employed with a hospital with a 403b plan, or with the federal government that comes with a TSP, you'll need to roll that over to your current 401k in order for you to gain access at the age of 55. And the other thing you want to make sure is that your current 401k plan allows you to withdraw penalty free at the age of 55. Not all 401k plans currently offer the rule of 55, which is unfortunate in my opinion. And remember, if you roll that 401k over to your IRA, you're going to lose the rule of 55. So you want to keep that in your 401k if you plan to use it as a part of your retirement income. Understanding your retirement timeline now absolutely matters, right? You need to know in what year you're going to turn 55 years old. So if you retire or quit your job at the age of 54, you're going to lose the rule of 55 benefit and end up waiting another 4.5 years when you turn 59 and a half to make any penalty-free withdrawals from your 401k. It is absolutely crucial that you keep track of how much of your 401k is in traditional and how much of your 401k is in Roth. It will make your retirement planning so much easier. Trust me. And if you're still not sure what you're doing, you can schedule a consultation with me by visiting firestarshare.com/consultation. Really good question. Oh, you know what? Let me turn my attention to YouTube. Sorry. There's literally 3 different streaming platforms going on right now. Hey, Attorney Aviator. I'm buying more too. Yeah. Let's see. Just so you know, you're not losing until you sell. You guys know I'm right. Yeah, Russell 2000 has been like one of those things that it's not something that you want to put 100% into it. Small cap has been lagging a lot for the last 3 to 4 years, but I do personally I put some of my money into the small cap, but not a whole lot. Right? It's not something that I'm like, I'm gonna put all my money into the small cap and then see what happens. I do want to see the performance though so far. Russell 2000, see how it's doing. Hmm. Russell 2000 is it's up 10.79%. So not bad. I think I talked about this in my private community. You can go to firesightchat.com/community and join my private group. And I talked about the shift in there's always a rotation, right? I think one of the reasons why S&P 500 is selling out right now is a lot of people are kind of reallocating. This is just my assumption, okay? Because this is something that I would do as well. My S&P 500 index fund was up about 17 to 18% as of last month, right? And I'm looking at the S fund, or not S fund, that would be TSP. I'm looking at Russell 2000 small cap index fund, and I'm like, that's not doing so hot, but I'm doing so well in the S&P 500. I'm gonna reallocate some of those profit and move that over to the Russell 2000. And I'm seeing a rotation or a shift in the market right now where people are kind of like, all right, we're gonna slow down on the S&P 500. That's not a permanent thing. It's just temporary, right? Temporarily shifting to where they're rotating how much they want to allocate their money into the Russell 2000. Now I'm kind of seeing that right now. And the year to date return is already 10%. But I'm guessing that is not, yeah, take a look at this right here, right? So the Russell 2000 was pretty flat at the beginning of the year, all the way until here. And look at this big jump here. Wow. July 16th. That's insane. What's today's date? July 24th. So let me take a look at a 1 month chart. Yeah, just in 1 month, it's performed 9.8% return. That's crazy. There's a CNBC guy. Gosh, what's his name? Tom Lee. Tom Lee on CNBC was saying that he is predicting that the small cap stocks are going to perform 50% return this year. And I'm like, I don't think a 50% return is realistic. But if 10% return happening in just 1 month, I mean, this is sort of a proof, right? That the market is shifting. And if you take a look at, let's take a look at S&P 500 here. Come on, baby. S&P 500. Let's take a look at 1 month. Yeah, it's not much gain. It's about 0.26%. So you see how there's like a little dip here, right? 54, 54. Let's see where we at. Yeah, so we hit the peak around July 16 here. July 16, and then now it's just kind of going down since July 16. So let me take a look at here, and then yeah, and July 16th, and they just continue to invest from there. So it looks like people are pouring more money into the small cap stocks. So that's going to be really interesting. If Tom Lee is right and finish the year with 50% return. Now, I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen, but that's going to be really interesting to see. But I do have some allocation to diversify my investments, right? I don't. I When I started investing, I used to put all 100% into the S&P 500, and that paid off really well. But I wanted to diversify a little bit to be more aggressive, to focus more on the specific sectors, and I wanted to focus a little bit more on the specific market cap stocks, small cap, medium cap, that type of thing. And some of the things that the stocks that I'm really bullish on, I try not to talk about it on this channel because that's not really the intent here, right? I'm not here to tell you guys invest in this, buy this, and then you're gonna be rich. I'm not one of those at all. It's really what comes down to is to pay off your stupid debt, invest, once you're done paying off your debt, increase your savings rate, start with index funds, manage your, understand your investment vehicles and how they work. Most people don't have that basic understanding. And I'm not calling them anything, but I'm here to educate everyone on how things work. And that's my job, and I love it. And I would never go on the internet and tell you guys what I'm doing or, buy certain stocks or anything like that. But it is worth looking into. The Russell 2000 right now, it's making a big shift. And does that mean it's going to keep going up? No, we could lose 10% tomorrow. Who knows? Right. So good question, though. Who was that from? Sorry, I missed the name. Oh, it's already scrolled. There's so many comments. Sorry. Let's see. Yeah, VTI and VOO. Remember, VOO is this S&P 500. VTI is the U.S. Total Stock Market Index Fund. So that one, they perform pretty much the same because the weight, the top 10 holdings are pretty similar, right? But VTI is exposed to like 4,000 stocks, US stocks, small cap, medium cap, large cap. S&P 500 is just focused on 500 largest caps in the US. I mean, so I may even argue that, just by investing in VOO or VTI, you already have an exposure to uh, international businesses, so you kind of have that international exposure. But yeah, I know it's kind of weird. They do perform very similar and all that. Should I prioritize Roth 401k or Roth IRA? Aren't they the same thing? And I'm guessing you just join in on the live stream. No, they're not the same thing at all. So Roth 401k would be your employer sponsored retirement account. Okay. Roth IRA is your individual retirement account. You don't have to be employed to open a Roth IRA, but you do need to have an income, earned income to contribute to the Roth IRA. Roth 401k, or let's just call it 401k. 401k is tied to your employer. So any private sector employer, you would have a 401k. If you're working in a nonprofit organization, you're going to have a 403b. If you work for the federal government, you're going to have a TSP or thrift savings plan. And they all act the same as the 401k, with a little bit of tweaks here and there, but essentially they all follow the same IRS guideline. Okay. The fees are different though. If I had to choose any of those 401k, if I could, TSP by far is the cheapest when it comes to investing in their funds. They're all index funds and they don't charge a whole lot when it comes to investing in CSIGF funds. Just looking at CS and I funds, those are really, really cheap index funds to go with. And the management expenses are really low too. The Roth IRA is even cheaper. To me, some of the top right, let me take a look. Schwab, Roth IRA, let me see. Best Roth IRA. Now that we're talking about it, so I'm just going to go ahead and bring that up. So I know you're asking about the, Roth IRA stuff. You can't go wrong with, Vanguard, Schwab, or Fidelity. I talked about that in a separate video, but, personally, I'm investing with Schwab, and I do have an account with Fidelity. I do have an account with Vanguard. As far as customer service goes, I would say, Schwab is probably the best and Fidelity is the second best. Vanguard is probably the worst when it comes to customer service, right? I prioritize Roth IRA for the simple reason. Roth IRA, you can take out your contributions at any time. Roth 401k, you cannot. So once you contribute into the Roth 401k, you have to keep your contributions in there. Roth IRA, you have more freedom to take the contributions out. Not that I'm recommending that you do that. I don't. I think you should keep your money where it is in the Roth IRA to let it grow, right? And the fees are much cheaper. There's no management expenses like the 401k does. So when it comes to IRA, even just going to a Schwab, Fidelity, or Vanguard, or any, brokerage account, the fees are really low. And when you invest in a low-cost index fund, I know Vanguard has the VOO that's like 0.03% in expense management expenses. If you go to, I think VTI, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, in the chat, VTI is like 0.06%, right? And Schwab has some of the index funds that doesn't require you to have any minimum to invest. Vanguard S&P 500 index mutual fund requires you to have at least $3,000 to start. Schwab is zero, Fidelity is zero. And Fidelity has an index fund that's like no management expenses at all. I believe that's called FZ-ROX. And this is not personalized financial advice. I'm just kind of showing you how to find it. I believe it's FZ-ROX. Is that it? Yeah, Fidelity Zero Total Market Index Fund. So this is a equivalent to VTI or VTSAC. So when you do the research, you can look at it here and oh wow, yeah, look at that. Expense ratio is 0% and expense ratio is 0%. What that means is that you pay nothing to invest. This is all your returns. This is what you get, and there's no minimum to invest. $0, and then NAV is net asset value. It means that it's $19.33 per share. But that doesn't matter because it's all fractional shares when it comes to mutual fund investing anyway. So when you do the research and like, oh, take a look at this Roth IRA, and then you like Fidelity, and then you want to invest in this, it probably makes more sense to invest in Fidelity index fund instead of in Fidelity instead of investing like a Schwab index fund in the Fidelity. That would be kind of weird, right? They might charge you fees too if you did that, and they're going to raise their eyebrow at you for doing that too. They're essentially the same thing. If you look at the top 10 holdings, so you can look, Microsoft, Apple, Nvidia, Amazon, Meta, Google, Berkshire Hathaway, Eli Lilly, Broadcom, and all that. So take a look. You can always look at the performances. 23% return in 1 year, 8% in 3 years, every year for the past 3 years, that type of thing. But Roth IRA is what I prioritize when it comes to between Roth IRA and Roth 401k. Let me back up a little bit. I prioritize employer match first. So if you get an employer match with a 401k, let's say you need to contribute 5% to get that 5% contribution from your employer, start with that 5% with the 401k first. The next step will be the Roth IRA. Max out your Roth IRA every single year. And then once you're done with maxing out your Roth IRA, then go back to your 401k and see if you can increase that to 10%, 15%, 20%, 25%, or maybe go up to the IRS limit, right? So the other difference is that 401k withdrawal rules is going to be a little bit different from the Roth IRA. I talked about that in a separate video, but just check it out when you get a chance. Really good question, though. I do prioritize Roth IRA over 401k, with the exception of the employer match if that's offered. So, good question. Okay, let's see. Ooh, spicy question from Dana. Dana C. Period. Do you predict a recession in 2025? I am not going to sit here like the bunch of guys on CNBC saying that there's going to be a recession in 2025 and I'm just going to short all the stocks. I have concerns going into 2025, but do I predict a recession? I can't ever predict something, right? Like nobody ever predicted that the COVID was going to be such a huge thing in 2020. And the market just tanked in March and April of 2020. And nobody predicted that the market was going to recover so fast from down that much all the way to 15% positive return, right? What I am concerned about is unemployment rate. What people forget about is how bad unemployment was in 2008, 2009. And it took all the way till 2017 to get back into the 4% category, right? So the employment situation, which I do cover in the live stream for CPI, and I'm going to be live streaming again next Wednesday to talk about the Federal Reserve when they make their decision on the interest rates. So make sure to subscribe if you haven't done it already. But employment situation for June came out with a 4.1% unemployment rate. Before that was 4%. Before that was 3.9%. If you go back to the historical data from 2007, end of 2007, the unemployment rate started to creep up from 4%, 4.2, 4.5, and they finished the year, I'm pretty sure it was pretty close to 5%, okay? They should have done something at the end of 2007 and say, holy cow, we need to do something now. And everything just started to collapse. I don't think we're going to see that in 2025. I mean, we could see it again in the future. Hopefully not. That would be very devastating. But I am worried about this unemployment rate creeping up to 4.5%. I mean, we could finish the year with 4.5% unemployment rate, and the jobs data is coming in like more, definitely more tighter than the year before. Employers are not hiring as much as they used to. That peak is done. So if you're in a job right now, you need to make sure that you hold on to your job. If you feel that's great. But if you need to switch jobs, just make sure that you are for sure going into something that's somewhat safe, right? Um, Unemployment is one thing. I think inflation is already kind of done, and the Fed is they're waiting to cut rates. They're not going to cut rates at the next meeting. That's just my personal opinion. I do think they're going to start cutting rates in September, unless inflation starts to creep up again in the next CPI report that comes out in August, and another CPI reading in September. And if unemployment rate starts to go back down, let's say the jobs report comes in a lot stronger in these summer months, then the Fed could pause on the interest rate cut. And the longer the interest rates remain high, the likelihood of a recession is higher, right? Economics 101. But because so many people retired in 2020, 2021, the jobs market is still there compared to the years before, compared to during the global recession. So my number one concern really is, what unemployment is going to look like. Inflation, I am not so worried about it anymore. But when people start to lose their jobs, it's going to become a domino effect. When you look at the real estate market and people start putting more homes onto the market and then inventory starts to go up, I'm not saying there's a real estate crash, but I'm saying that could be a sign, right? The other thing I want you to pay attention to is the discretionary spending. If you really, want to really nerd out with me on this, is what is going on with the manufacturing and discretionary spending and all the company earnings. And the other thing I want to pay attention to is the labor report on all the cyclical job sectors. If those job sectors start to come out weaker, restaurants, services, and all the job sectors that are more focusing on the discretionary side, then we could see some more weaknesses going into late 2024 and 2025. I don't think they're just going to settle with one rate cut. I think they're still going to do 2 rate cuts this year, and then possibly going, just doing the rate cut every single month from going forward. We got an election going on right now, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, good question, Dana, for putting me in the spot to answer that question. It's a tough one. But regardless of what happens, I'm gonna keep investing. I'm gonna try to stay away from politics. I know the video I made about Joe Biden's tax plan in 2025, and I just realized one thing is that it's so polarized. It's like if I say something that I'm like, I disagree with this person's plan to do something with the taxes, and I'm automatically become either a liberal or a conservative, that type of thing. I have been thinking about creating a video on Project 2025, but I'm kind of going against it too, because I know this is the election season. Project 2025 is talking about some of the tax planning that doesn't necessarily going to happen. I don't want to make a video where I feel like this is going to be fear mongering or making people become fearful of what might happen, that type of thing. I think I'm going to leave that alone and just see what happens. But I am going to focus on whoever gets elected and what their tax policies are going to be, what they want to do economically, that type of thing. I do want to do that. I'm going to try to stay away from some of the politics. I know you guys are saying in the comment section about the Project 2025. Uh, I'm going to stay out of it for right now and then see what happens. But yeah. Let's see. Okay. Oh man, it's hour and a half already. Okay. Well, that's pretty good. I think probably just answer one more question. No, you know what? It's already over time. I'm hungry and I need to get out of here. Um yeah, just keep on buying and have a good target goal, whatever it is that you're trying to do, whether you're trying to buy a house, whether you're trying to retire early, or whether you're trying to retire by the age of 60. Just look at the long-term time horizon. When the market does its correction in the past month, understand how it rotates. Understanding that will make you feel less fearful on your throughout your investment journey. I know a lot of people are just kind of, I don't know what to do with this, but just keep on going. If you have any questions, or you want to schedule a consultation with me, go to firesetchat.com/consultation. And you can always go to get my free resources, firesetchat.com/resources. And you can get all the spreadsheets for free. Not all of them, but a lot of them, like the financial independence calculator, retirement calculator, and all that stuff too. And if you do want to join my private community, just check out firesetchat.com/community. Okay. So anyway, been great. And I will see you guys in the next live stream next Wednesday for the Federal Reserve meeting.